Hi, boys and girls. It's so good to be able to talk to you again. Of course, it's sad that we can't be together, but I'm happy that I've gotten letters from quite a few of you, and everybody that I've gotten a letter from, I have written back to, and some people who haven't written me letters I've written back to, especially the little kids who can't write anything. And I try to put some nice things in the letters, so I hope I hear from you some more. Every time you write to me, I'm going to write back. I wanted to finish up the story of Naomi and Ruth. So just to remind you, Naomi and Ruth returned to Bethlehem because there wasn't a famine there anymore. And Ruth went to work gleaning in the fields. And she gleaned in the fields of Boaz. Gleaning meant that when the employees picked the grain, whatever fell on the ground, the gleaners were allowed to pick up. It was actually a law, and it was to take care of people who didn't have enough money and were poor. So when Naomi was gleaning in Boaz's field, he noticed her, and he wanted to protect her. He told his men to leave her alone, and he told his workers to drop extra grain on the ground. She could pick it up, and she got to pick up a lot of grain, and he told her that she was allowed to eat lunch with her workers. So Ruth was able to glean lots of barley, and she and Naomi were able to eat during the whole barley season. And when there was wheat season and the wheat was ready to be harvested, she also picked grain in Boaz's field, and only in his field. Naomi knew who Boaz was because he was a close relative of hers. And in those days, there was something called a guardian redeemer. When a family had some kind of crisis, like if someone was sick and they couldn't work, or if they didn't have enough money and they were going to lose their land, or something like that, the guardian redeemer had the right to buy your land, number one, but also had a responsibility to take care of you. And if a person's husband died, they would buy their land and actually marry them. So Naomi's gears were turning when she heard that Ruth was working in the field of Boaz. This is what she was thinking. So Naomi, she hatched a plan. At night, when the men finished working in the field of Boaz, they wouldn't go home to their families, probably because they worked late. And so they would sleep in the barn where they were threshing the wheat or the barley. They would eat supper there and they would go to sleep, and in the next morning, they wouldn't have to travel to work. They were there already. And so Naomi said to Ruth, "My daughter, listen to me. I have to tell you what to do. Tonight, when you come home from picking barley, I want you to bathe and put clean clothes on, because working in a farm is dirty work. And when it's nighttime, I want you to sneak onto the field, and when Boaz sleeps, I want you to lift the covers from his feet and go and lay down at his feet." And so that's what Ruth did. She obeyed what Naomi said. And at nighttime, she came home and put clean clothes on, and she snuck into the field and into the barn where Boaz was sleeping. And she lifted up the blankets where Boaz was sleeping, and she laid at his feet. And he didn't wake up until the middle of the night. Something surprised him. Maybe there was a sound, or maybe he moved his feet and he felt somebody there, and maybe he thought it was a raccoon or a cat. I don't know. But he woke up and he said, "Who's there? Who's there?" And Ruth said, "It's me, Ruth. You are my guardian redeemer. You have the right to marry me." And Boaz said, "Me? I should marry you? There are all kinds of young men who would love to marry you. You want to marry me? Don't worry about a thing. I'll take care of this. But there is a relative who's closer than me, and he has the right to marry you. But give me your shawl." And Boaz filled up her shawl with grain, and Ruth filled it up, closed it up, carried it home. It didn't look like this, it was full of grain. Carried it home and went to Naomi. And Naomi said, "How did it go, my daughter?" And Ruth said, "Boaz gave me all this grain." And Naomi said, "Don't worry about a thing. Sit back and relax. Boaz will take care of it today." Sure enough, Boaz went to the town square, and pretty soon the man who was the closer relative came by, and Boaz said to him, "Sit down, my friend. Come and sit next to me. You know Naomi came back to town." "Oh, yeah. Well, you are her guardian redeemer. You have the right to buy her land. You can plant crops there. Maybe you'll be a rich man. Do you want it? Just let me know, because if you don't, I will." And the man said, "Okay, I'll do that." He thought it was a great deal. And Boaz said, "One teensy little thing. You have to marry her daughter-in-law, Ruth." And the man said, "Wait a minute. I already have a family. I can't do that. You take it." Well, that's what Boaz wanted to happen. Well, there was a sign in those days when you promised to do something, you would take off one shoe and you would give it to the person. And that was the symbol that you were as good as your word. Now, I wonder how he got home at night. Did he have to limp home because he only had one shoe? I don't really know. Anyway, the next morning, Boaz let Naomi and Ruth know that he could be their guardian redeemer. Sure enough, Ruth and Boaz soon married, and they had a little baby not long after that. They named him Obed. Now, Naomi was not his real grandma, because Naomi was not Boaz's mother, and she wasn't Ruth's mother either, but she loved Obed like he was her real grandson. You know how grandmas are. You can't do anything wrong to your grandma. You might get in trouble with mom and dad, but not your grandma. And Ruth loved Obed like that. She carried him around all the time, and she cooed to him. In fact, people didn't even call him Obed. They called him Naomi's baby. Do you think Naomi was still bitter, or did she take her name Pleasant back? I think she did, because God had given her another family again. Now, I'm going to tell you something that's very, very important. Obed grew up, and he became the father of someone named Jesse. Do you remember who Jesse was in the Bible? He was the father of King David. That's very important, because Ruth originally was not a follower of the one true God. She was an idol worshiper, but she gave that up, and she promised to follow the one true God. She took Naomi's God as her own God, and she was honored in that way. Even though she wasn't one of the Israelites or one of God's chosen people, she had that wonderful privilege of being the great-grandma of King David. Well, I hope you're all well, boys and girls. I hope you like that story. It's one of my favorite in the Bible, but I have a lot of favorites. I hope I see you soon. Don't forget to pray for our country, for the leaders. Pray for your mom and dad, that they will be wise and they'll be able to take care of you. Please try to be obedient to mom and dad. You're home with them, and I know you're in the house all day long, but remember that God is always with you. God bless you. Love you.